Chelsea, do you believe in Tampa now that Baker Mayfield signed that 3-year, $100 million deal in the offseason? Mike Evans signed as well. He's back. Chris Godwin is back. Most of this team is back, but it is also a mediocre team. So where is the pulse of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers?
Yeah, I think it's a team that retained a good portion of a team that surprised a lot of people last year. Like, not only did they make it a game between the Lions, that game was tied going into the fourth quarter. So this team is certainly better than a lot of people expected last year. But I think it can be hard to duplicate that type of success with a quarterback that kind of has been, he can go either way. We know Baker Mayfield, part of his promise is that he is willing to sling it down the field. That kind of works when you have somebody like Mike Evans who can haul it in, but also somebody who can throw a lot of picks. What I'm really interested in is seeing how Baker Mayfield works this offense under a new offensive coordinator. Because remember last year, he had David Canales as his offensive coordinator, which was the same guy who was credited with the comeback season from Geno Smith back when he was the quarterbacks coach with Seattle. Then Dave Canales left, and what do you know? Geno Smith suffered some regression. So I'm wondering if it's going to be the same deal with Baker Mayfield now that he has to work with a new offense.
Yeah, that's actually a good point because the Eagles are a perfect example of that, right? Because two seasons ago, they were unstoppable. Then they replaced their offensive coordinator. They replaced their defensive coordinator. And you think, oh, it's going to be business as usual. But you change the vernacular. You change the play calling. You change alignments. There's so many things that go into an offense or defense. And clearly, it makes a massive difference. I'm curious about the Bucs. I'm not really sold on them. But I think they have a lot of possibility in that division, just because the division as a whole is, let's be honest, it's not a strong division, right? So this is one of the weaker divisions, has been a weaker division for the past few years now, where the Falcons at minus 120 certainly are not a shoo-in, but now they have Kirk Cousins at quarterback, so it's different for them. But I think if Baker Mayfield can continue what we saw last year, then this career renaissance could continue and make Tampa Bay better than we expect. They're getting a little bit older. They have a very good offensive line. They drafted Graham Barton with their third-round pick out of Duke. They already have Tristan Wirfs. So most of the offensive line is coming back, and they solidified it during the offseason. They do have great pieces at every level of the defense, maybe not a complete defense, but I think there's, going into the Bucs, if you're looking for a team that is, I think, well-coached, that has a quarterback who has improved his game, that has some interesting pieces, the Bucs are that team. I don't necessarily think they're going to make some sort of serious run, but if you're trying to convince me that I like the Bucs at plus money, and we'll talk with TJ Reeves during our final hour about this, and he's always very good when it comes to Tampa Bay, I think there's an argument to be made.
I think that you certainly can make a case, especially when you're getting them 3-1 to win the division. What were they last year? They were like 6-1 to win the division. And granted, we had a lot more questions about that team just because we didn't know what Baker Mayfield was going to give us. But I don't know. I think that's probably the best bet if we're looking, at all of the bets. If you want a Bucks positive bet, what about a win total at 7.5? It's juiced to the over. But last year we saw a lot of games that came down to the wire that were close. And usually when we see teams that have those type of seasons, they're due for some regression the next season. Remember when the Vikings won like every single close game and then they got to the playoffs and like looked terrible? Maybe it was the Giants. I think it was both those teams actually. But maybe that's the case for the Bucks this year. However, I think I'm more interested in some of the player props, which I'm finding out about a lot of these teams that instead of trusting the whole team, maybe you just trust a single player. Mike Evans is coming off another great season. It feels like every year people are saying Mike Evans is going to fall off, but he's had at least 1,000 receiving yards in every single year he's been in the NFL. So for Baker Mayfield, I feel like this is the security blanket for him. This is somebody who feels like he's always open in the end zone because obviously we have Chris Godwin taking away some of the catches as well, but it's the guy that's in the end zone is Mike Evans. He is their guy that they go to when they're in the red zone. So I think for Baker Mayfield, that's the connection he's going to rely on. I'll take the over on Mike Evans and his receiving yards at 1,050 and a hook.
Yeah, I like that as well. Mike Evans is a future Hall of Famer. He really is. This guy's an absolute animal. And the thing about Mike Evans, when you talk about can he keep this up, the thing about Mike Evans, which separates him from other receivers, is he's so physical, right? He's so big where, when you get older in your receiver, clearly maybe you lose a step or two and that affects your production. With Mike Evans, okay, maybe that happens to him, but even if it does, he can make up for that with being how physical he is. You can just throw it up to him. He'll just go up and get it. And just beat you wherever he's going in his route because he's just so physical and such a stud there. So I like that quite a bit. And also, if you're Baker Mayfield and you want to continue on this renaissance, if you will, this rejuvenation of his career, then you're going to go to the best receiver on your team. You know how NFL quarterbacks are. They find their guy. They find the best receiver. And also, if Mike Evans is in traffic or Baker Mayfield is in pressure, it's not the worst idea to say, you know what, I'm just going to throw it up in the end zone and see if Mike can go get it. And so you can do that with better, more physical, taller receivers. He's that guy. So I like that. Yeah, I like that prop a lot.
Yeah, I remember when Mike Evans was at Texas A&M, and I kept thinking that he was a tight end because he's so big. Like, he looked like he would be a tight end as opposed to a receiver. But I think you could probably make a good case for his touchdown prop as well. It's kind of makes me a little nervous that it's juiced to the under. It's set at 8.5. Last year, Mike Evans led the NFL in receiving touchdowns, had 13 on the season. Again, he's had at least 13 in 3 of his last 4 seasons. Granted, some of those were with Tom Brady, but still, Baker Mayfield, helped him lead the NFL. So I think that connection is going to be strong once again.
And I was out at Buccaneer training camp on Sunday, and he's looked good for what it's worth. It's practice. He's got the new contract. And you raise the interesting point that not just for the Buccaneers as a whole, but for Mayfield, you now have expectation. When he came in a year ago, 1 year prove-it contract at $4 million a year, which is minimum wage for the NFL quarterbacks. You see the money that's being thrown around right now recently to Tua, to Jordan Love, the money that Patrick Mahomes is going to re-up for because of Tua and Jordan Love. My God, if they're going to make 40 or 45 million a year, Patrick Mahomes got to be worth more than that. But Mayfield was making $4 million last year, and the Bucs were expected by most to be bad, to be like a 3 or 4 win team in the 17-game schedule. Now he plays well, especially at the end of last year. You win a playoff game, and the expectation now is they're going to win the division. They're going to win a 9th game, a 10th game, be a playoff team again. So you just wonder for him with the new contract, with the expectations now that the Bucs are supposed to be better, is it a different season? Are they a little complacent as the hunted team in the South versus the hunter? It is a very interesting question.